Okay, so the American dream,
Mm-hmm.
owning a home, right?
Yeah.
Building equity roots for yourself,
Right.
maybe pass it on to the kids.
Generations.
Yeah. But what if there's like a hidden obstacle
Huh.
that makes that dream harder for some people?
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at today.
Okay.
Appraisal bias.
Interesting.
We're going to unpack how like small differences in a home's value
Okay.
can have these massive ripple effects, not just for families,
Right.
but like for whole communities.
Right.
And get this, sometimes
Yeah.
simply taking down family photos
Holy.
can lead to a way higher appraisal.
Wow.
This happened to a family in Baltimore,
Okay.
the Austins.
Interesting.
Just think about that for a second.
Yeah. That's
That's-
wild. Why would that even...
I know.
Yeah.
It really highlights this thing called implicit bias.
Okay.
It's these unconscious prejudices,
Uh-huh.
even well-intentioned appraisers
Mm-hmm.
can bring to their work.
It's fascinating, These subtle biases can lead to big differences
Wow.
in the appraised value.
Okay, so let's say you're a homeowner.
Yeah.
How do you spot these red flags? Like,
Yeah. How do you know?
what are the signs that this is happening?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, it's not always as obvious as just removing family photos.
Right.
But one thing to watch out for are those comparable properties.
Okay.
Comps
Okay.
the appraiser uses.
Yeah.
Ideally, they should be similar to your home.
Okay.
Size, features, location.
Makes sense.
But sometimes you might see an appraiser using comps from a different neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
Maybe one that's predominantly of a different racial
Okay.
or socioeconomic makeup.
That makes sense. So if you're selling your house,
Mm-hmm.
you should really do your homework.
Yeah, research.
See what homes in your area have sold for recently.
Exactly. Get that baseline.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask the lender for a copy of the appraisal report
Oh.
and go through it carefully.
Okay.
If you see any red flags, like maybe they're using bad comps,
Right.
don't hesitate to question it.
Right.
You have the right to request they reconsider the value
Okay.
or even get a second appraisal from a different appraiser.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
For anyone trying to build wealth
Yeah.
through homeownership,
Mm-hmm.
there's this California couple, Tanisha Tate Austin and Paul Austin,
Okay.
and their home
Yeah.
was initially valued at like $500,000 less
Wow.
than they expected.
Oh, my God.
They think their race played a part
Wow.
in that low valuation.
This case brings up some critical questions about how appraisal bias can impact, your ability to build generational wealth.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Homeownership is how families build equity.
Yeah.
But if appraisals are consistently biased,
Right.
it limits how much equity you have.
Right.
That impacts your ability to leverage that equity for things like education,
Yeah.
starting a business, or, passing wealth down to your kids.
It's like this hidden obstacle that
Yeah.
can make it harder to get ahead,
Mm-hmm.
especially for minority homeowners.
Yeah.
And this isn't just a one-off thing.
Oh, really?
The Fair Housing Advocates of Northern California filed a lawsuit
Yep.
alleging a pattern of undervalued homes
Okay.
owned by Black and Latino families
Yeah.
in the Bay Area.
And this lawsuit
Yeah.
really highlights that this problem is systemic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about individual appraisers,
Right.
being biased.
Yeah.
It's about practices and structures
Yeah.
within the whole industry.
Right.
Now, we do have regulations like the Fair Housing Act
Okay.
and the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice,
Okay.
USP.
So USP, can you explain that a little more?
Yeah.
For our listeners who maybe haven't heard that term before?
Sure. So USP is basically
Yeah.
a set of standards for appraisers, like ethical and performance standards.
Right.
Covers things like competency, impartiality, confidentiality.
Okay.
But relying just on these regulations
Right.
to catch and prevent bias has its limitations.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like trying to fix a leaky faucet with a Band-Aid.
Exactly.
It'll stop some drips, but
Yeah.
you're not addressing the root problem.
You got it.
Yeah. So that brings up the question, what else can be done?
Right.
We hear a lot about algorithms and big data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that the answer?
I mean, they have the potential to be part of the solution.
Okay.
We're seeing these automated valuation models,
Okay.
AVMs.
Okay.
They use algorithms to look at tons of data
Okay.
to come up with these properties valuations,
Right.
but they're not a magic bullet.
So like how Zillow
Yeah.
estimates home values
Right.
with its estimate,
Exactly.
but on a more complex level.
Yeah. You got it.
Okay.
Those online tools give you a general idea, but they're not used for official appraisals.
Okay.
These AVMs we're talking about are more robust,
Right.
sophisticated.
Okay, so if algorithms are crunching the numbers instead of humans,
Right.
does that mean we can eliminate bias?
That's the tricky part.
Okay.
Algorithms can perpetuate bias
Uh-oh.
if they're trained on biased data.
I see.
It's about what you feed them.
So garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, exactly.
So what can we do
Right.
to make sure these algorithms are promoting fairness
Right.
and not just reinforcing these existing biases?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's one experts are working on right now.
Okay, so we'll get more into that later.
Yeah.
The potential of technology, data-driven solutions.
Mm-hmm.
But first, let's look at how appraisal bias can impact entire communities.
Yeah, let's broaden it out.
Yeah.
It's not just homeowners losing out on equity.
Right.
When properties in certain neighborhoods are consistently undervalued,
Yeah.
it has this ripple effect.
Okay.
Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Lower property values mean lower property taxes,
Okay.
which means less funding for things like schools,
Right.
parks,
Yeah.
libraries,
Yeah.
even just road maintenance.
I never really connected those dots before.
Yeah.
So it's not just the homeowner
Right.
losing out on equity.
Right.
It's this chain reaction
Exactly.
that can affect the whole community's well-being.
Exactly. And this underfunding
Yeah.
creates this downward spiral.
Yeah.
Schools struggle to find good teachers.
Right.
Parks get run down.
Yeah.
Infrastructure crumbles.
Makes it less desirable to live there.
Exactly.
Further depressing those property values.
And the cycle just continues.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Totally.
Where that undervaluation
Yeah.
contributes to disinvestment,
Right.
which then reinforces those lower values.
Got it. And this is particularly bad in communities that are already facing disadvantages
Right.
due to segregation and discrimination.
It's really eye-opening to see how something as technical as an appraisal
I know, right?
can have these far-reaching consequences.
It's crazy. It's a reminder that even in areas like real estate,
Right.
where you think things are objective,
Yeah.
human biases and inequalities
Yeah.
can have a lasting impact.
So how do we break the cycle?
Right.
We talked about alternative appraisal models,
Mhm.
greater transparency,
Yeah.
but I'm curious what else needs to happen.
Well, one key area is appraiser training.
Okay.
We need to make sure appraisers are well-versed,
Okay.
not only in like the technical stuff,
Right.
but also how to recognize
Mhm.
and address their own biases.
So going beyond checking boxes and really getting into that human element.
The human element, you got it.
Yeah.
There are organizations like the Appraisal Institute.
Okay.
They offer training programs specifically focused on like implicit bias
Right.
and fair housing practices.
Got it.
We need to encourage appraisers to participate in these.
Makes sense. If we want to change the system,
Right.
we got to change the mindset.
You got it. Another important area
Yeah.
is data transparency.
Okay.
Right now, there's just not a lot of data out there
Oh,
on appraisal practices.
Okay.
So it's hard to track patterns of bias
Mm-hmm.
and hold the industry accountable.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle
Exactly.
without all the pieces.
Yeah. We need more visibility into how these appraisals are being conducted
Right.
and what factors they're using.
That brings us back to technology.
Yes.
We touched on this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Automated valuation models. AVMs.
AVMs, are these algorithms the silver bullet?
Well, like I said before, AVMs have the potential to remove some of that human bias
Yeah.
from the appraisal process.
Right.
They rely on these algorithms that analyze tons of data.
To determine a property's value.
Yeah.
But there are some important things to consider.
Okay, so let's dive into that.
Okay.
What are the limitations?
Yeah.
What are the potential pitfalls?
Well, one big one is that algorithms
Mm-hmm.
are only as good as the data they're trained on.
Okay.
If the data itself is biased,
Right.
the algorithm will just continue that bias,
Okay.
maybe even make it worse.
So it's like
Yeah.
teaching a computer to bake a cake
Okay.
using salt instead of sugar.
Right.
You're not going to get a good result.
Exactly. We need to make sure the data
Mm-hmm.
used to train these algorithms is actually representative
Right.
of the diverse communities that we're serving.
Yeah.
So we need data from different neighborhoods, different types of properties.
But it's not just about
Right.
a lot of
It
data.
has to be good data.
It's about the right data.
Exactly. Data that's inclusive
Yeah.
and reflects the real world.
Okay.
Another concern is what they call black box algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
These are algorithms that are so complex
Mm-hmm.
that even the people who made them
Yeah.
don't really understand how they work.
Okay. That sounds a little unsettling.
A little bit.
If we're going to rely on these, shouldn't
Not-
we at least know what they're doing?
Totally. Transparency,
Yeah.
explainability,
Yeah.
those are crucial.
Okay.
We need to be able to understand the logic behind these algorithms to make sure that they're not
Right.
creating bias in ways that we can't see.
So it's not enough to just hand it over to the computers.
Right.
We need to be actively
Yeah.
involved in shaping how they work.
Shaping it, yeah. Making sure it aligns with our values of fairness and equity.
Okay.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
Technology is a powerful tool,
Right.
but it's not magic.
Right.
We have to guide its development
Mm-hmm.
and use it responsibly.
So where does that leave us?
Yeah.
What can homeowners, industry professionals, policymakers
Right.
to move towards a more equitable system?
Well, for homeowners, education is key.
Okay.
Understanding the process,
Yeah.
knowing your rights,
Right.
and just being aware of this potential for bias.
Okay.
The more you know,
Yeah.
the better you'll be able to advocate
Right.
for yourself and your community.
So it's about being an informed consumer.
Exactly. Don't just blindly accept
Mhm.
whatever the appraiser says.
Okay.
And there are resources to help you.
Okay.
Organizations like the National Fair Housing Alliance,
Mm-hmm.
they offer guides and toolkits for homeowners.
Good to know.
Yeah.
What about for
Industry.
professionals?
Yeah.
What can appraisers, lenders, real estate agents do?
Well, appraisers need to seek out training
Okay.
on implicit bias and fair housing practices.
Okay.
They need to examine their own assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they're using comps that are actually comparable.
So it's about
Yeah.
going beyond just the technical skills
Yes.
and embracing a more
Holistic.
holistic
Holistic.
approach
Yeah.
that considers the
Yeah.
social and ethical implications.
You got it. And lenders and real estate agents,
Yeah.
they have a responsibility to make sure
Yeah.
that they're working
Mm-hmm.
with appraisers who are committed
Yeah.
to fairness.
Okay.
They can also educate their clients about the process,
Right.
help them understand their rights.
It sounds like it's going to take a collective effort
100%.
from everybody.
This isn't an issue that any one group
Right.
can solve on their own.
Right.
It requires collaboration, accountability,
Yeah.
and just a willingness to be honest
Yeah.
about how bias shows up
Right.
in our society.
And what about policymakers?
Yeah.
What can be done at the legislative level?
Well, there are a number of solutions.
Okay.
One is to strengthen fair housing laws
Okay.
and regulations
Yeah.
to specifically address appraisal bias.
Okay.
Another is to give more funding
Mm-hmm.
to fair housing enforcement agencies
Okay.
so they have the resources to investigate
Right.
and prosecute cases of discrimination.
So giving those laws and regulations
Yes.
some teeth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not just words on paper.
Right.
We also need to find ways to make the whole process more transparent.
Okay.
So requiring appraisers to,
Yeah.
explain how they got to their conclusions,
Mm.
or maybe even create a public database
Right.
of appraisal data
Okay.
that could track patterns of bias.
Transparency
Yeah,
is powerful for accountability.
you got it.
Yeah.
And finally, we need to invest in research and innovation
Okay.
so we can come up with better ways
Mm-hmm.
to conduct appraisals
Right.
that are less vulnerable to bias.
Okay. So
Maybe explore the use of AI and machine learning
yeah.
in ethical, transparent ways.
So using technology
Yeah.
not to replace,
Exactly.
but to enhance.
But to help it, to make the process more fair,
Okay.
equitable.
This has been so illuminating.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
It's clear that this is a complex issue
It is,
with really deep roots.
definitely.
But there are things that we can do
We can.
individually and collectively
Yes,
to address it.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive.
It has been.
Thanks for being here today.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners,
Yeah.
we hope this episode has given you the knowledge
Mm-hmm.
to understand
Yeah.
the complexities of this
Mm-hmm.
and to take action
Absolutely.
to make that dream of homeownership
Yeah.
accessible to all.
For everyone.
Knowledge is power.
Yes, it is.
Keep learning, keep asking questions,
Mhm.
keep advocating for change.
Ah.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
Keep diving. One thing to pay close attention to is the description
Okay.
of your home's condition and features.
Right.
Does it accurately reflect the upgrades you've made? Or the unique characteristics of your property?
Mm-hmm.
Or does it seem to kind of downplay them?
Okay.
You also want to look at the neighborhood description.
Right.
Does it use language that could be perceived as negative
Okay.
or code for, like
Yeah.
racial or socioeconomic biases.
Ah, so even the language used
Totally.
could be a clue.
Words matter.
Yeah, that's something I wouldn't have thought of.
For example, if the report uses terms like up and coming
Okay.
or transitioning
Right.
to describe your neighborhood, that could be a red flag.
Okay.
It might mean that the appraiser is
Yeah.
assuming future gentrification
Right.
rather than looking at the current market value.
So it's like reading between the lines.
Yeah, exactly.
But uncover these biases
Right.
that might be there.
And remember, you don't have to figure this out on your own.
Okay.
There are organizations like the Fair Housing Centers
Right.
that can help. They can give you guidance, support,
Yeah.
if you think you've been discriminated against.
Right.
They can even connect you with legal resources
Well, okay.
if you need to take further action.
Okay, so we've talked about spotting those red flags.
Right.
But what about the bigger picture?
Okay. Yeah.
You said earlier that undervalued homes can impact
Yeah.
whole communities.
Right.
Can you break that down?
Sure. So imagine a neighborhood
Okay.
where homes are consistently undervalued.
Okay.
That means less property taxes
Right.
collected by the government,
Okay.
which means less money
Right.
for things like schools, parks, libraries, road maintenance.
Wow, I never really all
Connected it like that before.
Right.
So it's not just
That's bigger
the
than
individual homeowner
Yeah.
losing out.
it affects
The whole community.
the whole community.
Yeah. And this underfunding
Mhm.
can create this downward spiral. Schools can't get good teachers.
Right.
Parks fall apart.
Right.
Infrastructure crumbles.
Making it less desirable
Exactly.
to live there.
Yeah.
Which then
And so property values go down even more.
reinforces
This
things
continues.
those lower valuations.
Yeah, it's like a
Self-fulfilling.
self-fulfilling prophecy, yeah.
Yeah.
Where undervaluation
Right.
leads to disinvestment,
Yeah.
which then reinforces those lower values
And this cycle is especially bad in communities
that are already
that are already
Yeah.
facing disadvantages.
right due to like segregation and discrimination.
It's really eye-opening to see how something
It's wild, I know.
obstacles can have these consequences.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even in areas like real estate
Right.
that we think of as objective,
Yeah. Objective.
human biases
Mhm.
and systemic inequalities
Right.
can really have a lasting impact.
So how do we break the cycle?
Right. That's the question.
We've talked about some solutions,
Right.
like
yeah.
alternative appraisals,
Hmm.
more transparency.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on
Yeah.
what else needs to happen.
Well, I think one really important area is appraiser training.
Okay.
We need to make sure that appraisers
Okay.
not only understand the technical stuff,
Right?
but they're also equipped to
Mm-hmm.
recognize and address their own biases.
So going beyond just
going beyond checklists.
checking the boxes.
Right. It's about
Really getting into
the human element.
that human element.
Human element, exactly.
Yeah.
There are organizations out there, like the Appraisal Institute,
Okay.
that offer these training programs
Right.
focused on implicit bias
Okay.
and fair housing practices.
And we need to.
Yeah, encourage appraisers to actually do those trainings.
It makes sense. If we want to change the system,
Right. You got to change the people in it.
we need to change the people's mindsets.
Mindsets, exactly.
Yeah.
Another important area is data transparency.
Okay.
Right now,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of public data
Oh.
on appraisal practices.
Okay.
So it's hard to track.
Yeah.
Are there patterns of bias?
Mhm.
Is the industry being held accountable? We don't really know.
Right. It's like trying to solve a puzzle.
Right. You're missing pieces.
Get out all the pieces.
We need more visibility into how these appraisals are happening.
Yeah.
What are they looking at?
Right. Okay. That brings us back to technology.
It does.
We talked about this earlier.
Mhm.
Automated valuation models.
AVMs.
AVMs.
Yep.
Are these algorithms the answer?
Well, as we said earlier,
Yeah.
AVMs have the potential
Mm-hmm.
to remove some of that human bias.
Yeah.
They rely on these algorithms
Right.
that crunch tons of data
Okay.
to determine the value of a property.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things to keep in mind.
Okay. So let's get into that.
Right.
What are some of the limitations
Yeah.
of using algorithms?
Well, one big one is that algorithms
Mm-hmm.
are only as good as the data they're trained on.
Okay.
If the data is biased,
Right.
the algorithms is going to be biased.
It's going to learn.
It's going to learn the bias, right?
That biased information.
And it might even make it worse.
So it's like
Yeah.
teaching a computer to bake a cake.
Okay, I like
but
this.
the recipe is wrong.
Right. You're using salt instead of sugar.
Yeah, you're going to get a bad cake.
Right. You need to make sure that the data is representative of
Yeah.
the people that we're trying to serve.
It needs to be inclusive data.
Yeah, from all different kinds of neighborhoods, price points, property types.
So it's not just about having a lot of data.
It's about having good data.
It's about having the right kind of
The
data.
data, exactly. Data that reflects the real world.
Another concern is these so-called black box algorithms.
Black boxes, yeah.
Yeah, these are algorithms that are so complex
Yeah.
that even their creators
Right. The people who made them
don't understand
don't even know
how they work.
how they work. It's true.
It's a little
It is a little unsettling.
unsettling.
Yeah, because if we're going to rely on algorithms
Right, to make these big decisions.
to do this important work,
Yeah, shouldn't we know
shouldn't we know
how they're doing it?
how they're making these decisions? We should.
So we can't just
Right. It's not about
hand it over to
abdicating responsibility.
the machines.
Right. We have to be
They have to be involved.
involved in shaping how it's developed and used, making sure it's fair,
Okay.
equitable.
So where does that leave us?
That's the question.
What can homeowners, industry professionals, policymakers
Right. What can we do
to create
to make things better?
a better system,
Yeah.
a more equitable system?
Well, I think for homeowners, the most important thing is education.
Okay.
Understand how this process works.
Right.
Know your rights.
Mm-hmm.
Be aware of the potential for bias.
Okay.
Knowledge is power.
Right.
And the more you know,
Yeah.
the better equipped you are
Right.
to advocate for yourself and your community.
So being an informed consumer.
An informed consumer.
Yeah.
Don't just blindly trust
Right.
what the appraiser says.
Okay.
And there are resources out there
Okay.
to help you with that.
Okay.
Organizations like the National Fair Housing Alliance,
Right.
they have guides and toolkits
Yeah.
specifically for homeowners.
Good to know. What about
Yeah.
industry professionals,
Okay, yeah.
appraisers,
Mhm.
lenders,
Yeah.
real estate agents?
They all have a role to play.
What can they do?
Well, appraisers need to really be proactive
Okay.
about seeking out training
Okay.
on implicit bias and fair housing.
Okay.
They need to look at their own assumptions.
Right.
Make sure that they're using comps
Yeah.
that are truly comparable.
So going beyond.
Yeah, it's about going
But
beyond
these technical skills.
those technical skills.
Yeah.
And thinking about
The bigger picture.
Yeah, the bigger picture.
The ethics of it.
Social implications.
Yeah.
And lenders
Mm-hmm.
and real estate agents,
Right.
they also have a responsibility.
Okay.
They need to be working with appraisers
Mm-hmm.
who are committed to fairness.
Right. So it seems like it's going to take
It's going to take a village,
all of us working together.
like collective effort. Yeah,
Yeah. To make this change.
100%.
Right.
This is not something
Yeah.
that one person
Right.
or one group can fix.
It's going to take all of us.
We need to work together,
Mm-hmm.
hold each other accountable,
Yeah.
and be honest about how bias shows up
Mm-hmm.
in our systems.
What about policymakers?
Right.
What can be done
Yeah, what can they do?
at that level?
Well, there are a few things. One is to strengthen
Yeah.
the fair housing laws we have.
Okay.
Make sure they specifically address appraisal bias.
Okay.
Another is to increase funding
Okay.
for those fair housing enforcement agencies.
Right. Give them more power.
Give them more power so they can investigate
Yeah.
and prosecute
Right.
cases of discrimination.
So those laws have some teeth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not just words on paper.
Right. Exactly.
We also need to explore ways to make the whole appraisal process
Yeah.
more transparent.
Okay.
So like require appraisers to really explain
Yeah.
how they came to their conclusions.
Right.
Maybe even create a public database
Okay.
of appraisal data
Okay.
so we can look for patterns of bias.
Transparency can be really powerful
So it can.
for accountability.
For accountability, yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, we need to invest
Yeah.
in research and innovation
Okay.
to find new and better ways
Yeah.
to conduct appraisals. Ways that are less susceptible
Yeah.
to bias.
Okay.
Maybe using AI and machine learning,
But ethically.
but ethically,
Yeah.
responsibly,
Yeah.
transparently.
So using technology
Yeah.
not as a replacement with human judgment,
But as a way to improve it.
but as a way to
Yeah, to make the process more objective, more fair.
to augment and enhance.
Augment, enhance, exactly.
Yeah.
You got it.
Okay. This has been a really illuminating conversation.
It has been.
It's clear that appraisal bias
Mm-hmm.
is a complex issue.
It is very complex.
But we can do
But we can do things about it.
to address it.
We can.
It's amazing what we've learned
Yeah.
just by diving deep
A lot.
into this topic. Appraisal bias.
Yeah,
It's a hidden obstacle for so many people
absolutely.
trying to achieve that dream
It is.
of homeownership.
Yeah, and it's important to remember,
Yeah.
we're not just talking about numbers here. These appraisals have real-world consequences
Absolutely.
for families, communities, for everyone.
Yeah. But I have to say, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed
I guess.
by all this.
It's heavy stuff.
It can be discouraging
Yeah.
to think about
Mm.
how deep these biases run
Right?
in the system.
It's a big problem.
What gives you hope?
Well, I think the fact that we're having this conversation
Yeah.
is a good sign.
Okay.
Appraisal bias is getting more attention
Right.
from the media policymakers.
Right. That's true.
That's a big step forward.
You can't fix something
Exactly.
that you don't even know about.
Awareness is key.
But awareness alone isn't enough.
Right. What else?
What are some concrete signs
Yeah, it's
that things are starting to change?
Well, we are seeing some progress. Some states
Yeah.
are putting laws in place
Okay.
that address appraisal bias.
Okay.
And there's a movement in the appraisal industry
Mm-hmm.
to promote diversity and inclusion.
So it's not just outside pressure,
Right.
but people within the industry.
Yeah. People are starting to see the need for change
Yeah.
and taking action.
Okay. That's good.
Technology is playing a role too.
Oh, how so?
There are companies
Yeah.
developing new appraisal tools
Okay.
using AI and machine learning
Right.
to try to reduce bias.
But we talked about that.
We did.
It's important to make sure
Yeah.
those are developed
Yeah.
and used responsibly.
Well, yeah. You've got to have that human oversight.
Right. Technology is powerful,
It is.
but it's not a cure-all.
You got it.
Yeah.
We have to make sure it's promoting fairness,
Right.
not making things worse.
So what can our listeners do?
That's a great question.
If they're hearing this and thinking,
Yeah.
okay, this is all interesting, but
But what can I do?
what can I do?
Well, first, educate yourself.
Okay.
Learn about the process. Know your rights.
Hmm.
Be aware of the potential for bias.
Right.
Knowledge is power. The more you know, the better you can advocate for yourself
Right.
and your community.
So don't just blindly accept
Yeah, don't just take their word for it.
what you're told.
Be an informed consumer.
Right. Ask questions
Yeah,
if something seems off.
right.
Challenge it.
Yeah.
Ask for a reconsideration or get a second opinion from a different appraiser.
So using your voice.
Absolutely. Make yourself heard.
Yeah.
And hold the industry accountable.
And if you really want to make a difference,
Yeah.
what can people do?
Get involved. There are organizations like the National Fair Housing Alliance working to fight appraisal bias.
Right.
You can volunteer, donate, spread the word.
So there's a role
Yeah, there's something everyone can do,
for everyone,
big or small.
whether it's
Mhm.
educating yourself,
Right.
advocating for your rights.
Or supporting these organizations
Both.
that are making real change happen.
This has been a great conversation.
It has been, yeah. It's clear that this is a complex issue
Very complex.
with deep roots.
Definitely.
But there are things we can do
There
to
are.
make it better.
We can do it.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. Thanks for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope this episode has given you the knowledge to understand the issue of appraisal bias and to take action to ensure that the dream of homeownership is truly accessible to all. Knowledge is power. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep advocating for change. Until next time, keep diving deep.